All right, so if you're just joining us, we'll start in just a few moments. But if you could just make sure your mics are muted and we will get going in just a little bit, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Right.
I'm going to keep my camera off because I'm dressed for a presentation for my Toastmasters meeting right after this. So I'm going to do that.
Sounds good. You can keep it on if you want, but yeah, we'll go ahead and leave the mics off. That's fantastic. Thank you.
You look great, Victoria. You look great.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we'll just go ahead and start with some of the housekeeping things. So welcome to the October edition of Topper Career Talks, brought to you by the Sandwich University Alumni Association and Career and Professional Development. So just a few housekeeping items. Please note that we want to make sure everybody is muted during the presentation, and as our speakers are speaking, they will unmute themselves. To submit any questions, please utilize the Zoom chat feature. The event team will go ahead and monitor the chat and present those submitted questions to myself and the panelists, and there will be time to ask questions at the end of the presentation. But if you have something that pops up as they're speaking, go ahead and send it to the chat and we can just save it for the end. To have the best view of the panelists as they're speaking, I would just consider changing your Zoom view from gallery to speaker view. That feature is located at the top right of your screen. It will either say gallery or speaker view. All right. So tonight's edition is on optimism, wellness, and tips for your career search. So we have two wonderful guests tonight. So first up, we have Lauren Cohen, who will introduce herself in just a moment. And we also have Elizabeth Navarro-Berrocal. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren to begin her stuff of the presentation. So Lauren, as you want me to advance the slides, just let me know, okay?
Will do, thank you. Yes, thank you, Jason. As Jason mentioned, I am a licensed clinical social worker and I am in private practice. So for my work, what I do is I support specifically adult women or women-identified individuals in the realm of anxiety and perfectionism. And my practice is grounded in social justice with my social work background and also intersectional feminism. So not only do I help people process through their feelings and how they could do things differently, I also help them see the context of the bigger world around them and how they are navigating that world as an individual and how the people around them, their family, friends, significant others are impacting them and impacting their life experience, as well as bigger systems like government, society, educational institutions, all of the things that help us understand and give us messages from the world around us. So that's how a lot of people end up in my practice is they want both perspectives. And that also means that that's the context that I'm bringing to the presentation and a lot of what I will be speaking to, and you'll notice that as I talk more. Jason, if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be awesome. So when I was thinking about maintaining optimism and wellness in the job search process, I was thinking about what are the things that my clients struggle with, what I'm seeing, and also what I'm seeing that is helpful, and knowing the lenses that I use in order to be able to do that. So one of the big things that I'm seeing with people is that it's hard for them to differentiate what is a them problem and a them struggle and what is actually a hard system to be navigating. So right now, what we know, and y'all know it because you're navigating it and dealing with it, is that our economy has shrunk and our job market is even tougher than it was before. and more people are looking for jobs, more people are applying for jobs that are available, and navigating this is really, really hard and sucky. And especially if you're a part of a marginalized population like women, people of color, differently abled people, people of the LGBTQIA community, all of this is creating a really, really hard atmosphere to navigate. But the messages that we're getting from social media are that we should be thriving. And from the government, we're hearing it's not that big of a deal. And if you're struggling, then it's a you problem, or you're creating it. And maybe from friends and family, we're hearing like, oh, you just need to work harder. And we have that, like, we already kind of have that bootstrap mentality in the back of our minds if we've grown up in this like white American culture, especially strong in Texas. So what I really work with my people first and foremost is to help them really embody that what they're dealing with is hard. They are navigating a hard job market. It's not that they are not doing enough or that they're responsible for where they are right now and the fact that they're struggling. It's something that has been created around them and for them, unfortunately, something that we're all dealing with. So being able to differentiate and separate those two is super important and is that first step in really helping people navigate this in an intact way. Next slide. So while we are separating responsibility and acknowledging the hardness of this current job market, the next piece that I work with people on that I've seen be really helpful is to help them recognize their limits in the job search process. So if we're thinking like, oh, this is a me problem, that must mean that I need to like double down and work harder. And for my people in particular, since they tend to be on the more anxious perfectionist spectrum, what that tends to look like is feeling like they have to control every aspect of the job search process. They need to double down. And instead of being able to tolerate the unknowns, being able to recognize that their timeline and what they're wanting might be different from what the job market is possible, helping them sit in the space of like, hey, we don't know what will happen. What they end up doing is being more energized and engaged in a less helpful way and in a more obsessive way, in a more compulsive way. So they go from something that could be helpful of like networking with people in the field that they're trying to get into to deciding they have to network with 7 people a day and apply for 14 jobs a day and reach out to a specific recruiter 6 times in a row, and really being able to recognize your limits and recognize that you are a part of this, but you can't force it. And being able to tolerate and sit with that reality has been super helpful and hard, but super helpful and important for people. Next slide. So in addition to separating responsibility, tolerating the unknown, and recognizing where your limits are, another piece, especially around staying optimistic, that's been super helpful for people is anchoring within themselves. And what I mean by that is that searching for a job can be soul-sucking, and it can be really hard because you are putting yourself out there consistently, and you are submitting applications and resumes into like big giant black holes, or you are going through the interview process and you're getting rejected, or you're not hearing back, or all kinds of things are happening that can give your brain enough space to get the message that like you suck and that you don't bring anything to the table and that you are the problem. And what's important to counterbalance and counteract that hardness that is rejection and not hearing and job searching is to be able to anchor in the things that you do bring to the table. So what makes you a good person? What makes you a good employee? What employment background you have? What projects you've done that have been successful? What you bring to the table, and being able to have reminders of that all around you as you're like, oh my God, I suck, when really it's this sucks. So if that's, you know, a reminder in your phone that goes off every day that says like, hey, you did this project, you managed these accounts, you made this happen. Or it's a Post-it note on your bathroom mirror, or it's a pep talk you give yourself every day. Whatever it is that you need to be able to remind yourself of who you are and what you bring to the table as a professional, and that this is a hard thing, you are not bad, is super helpful and important for people, especially in that optimism realm. Next slide. So next piece that really does go along with anchoring within yourself is finding your cheerleaders. So it is super helpful and important, and I would say vital, to have that internal dialogue and internal understanding of who you are, what you bring to the table, all of the great things that you do, and all of the great characteristics that you have and the greatness that is you. Having that internal piece is super helpful. So is having that external piece and the external validation, external reminders. It's almost like you're kind of getting support from all sides, not just yourself, but from other people. And that is super helpful and important. So another piece of the like getting through this puzzle that I talk through with people is finding your cheerleaders. And that means like finding the people in your life who support you, but also thinking through how they show up for you and what they do well. So not only would you say like, oh, well, my best friend is super supportive, she's one of my cheerleaders. You would also think about like, my best friend is a cheerleader, and how she does that, how I know she's a cheerleader is she texts me at 10 p.m. and says, put down your laptop and like watch this show with me. Or my mom is a cheerleader because she talks me through all of my feelings. My other friend is a cheerleader because she will tell me like, yeah, this does suck, and like brings that like honesty and awareness. And maybe she's best over email. You know, it's bringing those two pieces together of like, who are they, how do they show up, as well as when do I need them to show up? Do I need a pep talk right now? Do I need a this sucks moment right now? Do I need space to talk about my feelings and the hardness of this? So being able to really bring those together and understand that is super helpful for people. On the other side of that, you also want to start to recognize like, who are the people who aren't your cheerleaders? Who are the people who don't bring what you need? Who are the people who are going to say, oh, you're anxious? Oh, well, these are the 5 things that you haven't even thought about that you should be worrying about right now. Don't talk to them. Especially don't talk to them on days when you're already feeling anxious or you're feeling overwhelmed or you're upset. They're just going to feed that and expand it. And if it's not possible to not talk to them, then talk to them about work for like 2 seconds and then shift it and bring it to something else. Oh my God, did you see that meme? That cat video was cute and adorable and hilarious. Can you believe what that person did? Whatever it is that you can distract and minimize impact is super helpful and important. So find your people, find who's not your people, limit interactions with them is super helpful, especially in that optimism realm. Next slide. So the next piece of this getting through the job search intact puzzle really speaks to wellness and maintaining a life outside of the job search. So we've already separated and acknowledged responsibility. We're already recognizing limits and boundaries about what we can and cannot do. We're anchoring in how great we are. We're finding our cheerleaders. Next is can be paradoxical for people because they're like, oh, but my life should be job search. And it's like, no. You need something outside of the job search so that you can continue to navigate it in a way that is intact, that is well, that doesn't burn you out for when you do find a job. And that, that can be kind of a struggle for people to take on board and is still super helpful and important. It's all about boundaries. You know, not only do you have boundaries with yourself in the job search process, but you also have boundaries around how much this job search and the professional world and work is going to take up in your life. So what I talk about with people, and that's been super helpful with my clients, is helping them identify the things that remind them that their life is bigger than job search. It could be rereading book series that you have liked, rewatching a TV show that you like, getting outside, exercising, doing yoga with Adrienne because it's free and online. It could be perfecting a baking recipe, whatever it is that helps you dig into something that is not job or work related and that reminds you that your life is bigger than just this really, really hard job search and helps contain it. So those are the big 5 of what has helped my clients, my people navigate the really tough terrain that is job searching right now. And I'll pass it back to Jason.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren. So now we are going to turn it over to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, if you could start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we can have you take it from there. And I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the slideshow. That way we can see everybody on the screen.
Okay. Hi there, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Berrocal. I have been in private practice. I'm a licensed professional counselor in San Antonio, Texas. I have been in private practice a little bit over 10 years now. I am also finishing up my PhD in gender and diversity, and my main research is in Latin American women and their birth decision process, or their decision-making process during birth in Spain. So it's been a very long process for me, but I'm getting through it, and I'm hoping to defend sometime this semester. My private practice, I specialize strictly in women's issues. So that can look like anything from postpartum depression to infertility to anxiety to depression. I'm also an EMDR therapist. And so basically what that means is that I work also with a lot of trauma. And this can look like many different things, such as sexual, emotional, physical trauma that women have suffered through. So I love what I do. I feel like it's just it's amazing work. My patients are amazing. And I really try to look at it from a very existential point of view. I really like for my patients to look at some of the meaning. It sounds very contradictory, but there's a lot of meaning and a lot of purpose behind pain and behind trauma. I'm a big believer that pain and rejection and trauma can really catapult us to transition, to transform. I feel like pain and trauma kind of, we have either two ways we can look at it. We can look at it in the very negative way, or we can look at it in the very positive way. And it's really up to us and our decisions that we make during this process in deciding which way we go. What I've been seeing a lot in my private practice, lately I've been seeing a lot of depression. And for some reason, this depression is also triggering a lot of trauma. I think what this kind of tells me is that a lot of people are having a lot of time on their hands at home and maybe in difficult situations with their family. And so this trauma has time to kind of come up to the surface, so to speak, when it's been, basically down, for sometimes years, months, weeks. So I've been really seeing that a lot. So as I begin, I want you to really kind of think about something. I really kind of want you to think about what pain and rejection mean to you on a personal note. What does pain and rejection mean to you as you're looking for your job? And obviously, we all have a connection with pain being bad and detrimental. And we all have this preconceived notion that it's something that we have to avoid. But I'd like for us to keep that in mind. But also, what a lot of times what we don't think about is how the pain can really assist in our growth and in our journey moving forward. So how can this pain catapult us to the next level so that we're able to move forward? I do think that the pandemic these past few months has been very instrumental in our emotional process. I do think that it's made people go with the flow. It's made people learn to kind of trust the process when before I don't think a lot of us really knew how to. So as I'm sure everyone's aware, the with the economy and the way that it is, we've had a lot of job loss. We've had a lot of time on our hands, and sometimes learning to go with the flow and letting things settle can be very instrumental in our health and our well-being, and understanding and being okay with the fact that there is a certain amount of loss of control that happens in our life in these very detrimental situations that happen. And it's very difficult to let go of control. And also I wanted to bring about the point that an important part of transition, again, we spoke about that it requires pain and rejection, because without that, we have no reason or no precursors to make us want to change. So basically what I'm saying is that without the pain and the rejection, we wouldn't change. We would be very comfortable in the spots that we were in and never wanting to move forward, to follow down life's paths and our transitions that we need to make to become better, better within and better professionally, better in our personal lives and in our relationships. And I think that this time during the pandemic, it has really put a mirror up to us. It has really made us self-reflect on some of the things that maybe we didn't see before or didn't want to see before, which in itself can be a very difficult process to look in the mirror. I also do believe that pain is a jumping off point, right? This is where we find our meaning. This is where we find our purpose in our lives, both professionally and personally. So we've again come to the crossroads where we have to make decisions. and decide what our next steps are going to be, and what we want to be or where we want to be in 3 months, in 6 months, a year. I think it's imperative that each of us have goals that we set and that we keep track and we organize where we want to be in certain amount of times, and we try to stick to them. I like to tell my patients that it's in all the small, consistent steps daily that that make the biggest of difference. We don't just get up and run a marathon overnight. We start by walking a few minutes, and then we move up to a run, 2 to 5 to 10 minutes up till we get to 2 hours, and it's those small, consistent, incremental steps are imperative in long-term goals. So it's staying very consistent. And even staying in a routine, as much as a lot of us don't like routine and we feel like it's something mundane, but it's imperative that we stick to these things. And what I really see in my private practice work, what really sticks out lately is how my patients, this time during the pandemic has been very interesting to me, because I've been seeing a lot of my patients really kind of break through their traumas. And like I said, I think that this particular time, it's forcing us to move into a direction, and we're choosing in which direction we're wanting to move. So I'm seeing some very beautiful things going on in my private practice, especially with the EMDR therapy. A lot of times, my patients speak about breaking. They break, before they're able to rebuild again. And I think that we're all kind of seeing this happening in our own lives, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally. In order for us to construct, we have to deconstruct first. I'm a big believer in that. Everybody kind of starts from the ground up, especially during hard situations. And it's kind of like a very much sink or swim type of situation that I feel that's going on. But I'm seeing some beautiful work right now going on in my private practice in regards to breaking through the trauma. I think this time has allowed people to become a lot stronger, a lot more authentic, a lot more vulnerable, which is a very beautiful thing. Also, in regards to rejection, none of us really like to obviously feel like we've been rejected, or when that job application comes back and, we've been denied for work, or, we've been looked over. I like to tell my clients that sometimes we have to turn around and we have to confront this rejection instead of running away from it or questioning ourselves and knocking down our own self-esteem and our self-confidence. I think that we can always look back and see what we may and what we could have done better, but doing so in a constructive way. We're not tearing ourselves down. We're giving ourselves some constructive criticism, how we can change, how we can do better the next time around. I think that that's very important when we look at rejection. Again, we're trying to turn it so that we're taking the more optimistic, positive view on it. And I do think that when we turn and when we confront rejection, I feel that it makes us a lot stronger. When we turn around and we understand what's gone on, we find meaning and we find purpose in that rejection. And again, we grow. This is how we grow. This is how we transition into things. And a lot of people have asked me about self-care, what we can do during this time in regards to feeling better. And a lot of people ask me, or tell me, I go and I get a manicure or a pedicure, and they seem to think that this is self-care, which it is. Everybody loves a mani and a pedi, but there's so much more to that. I like to think of self-care as being something that's mandatory. I think it's something that we have to implement in our lives, and it can come in many different forms. It can come in self-meditation, when you wake up in the morning. The first 5 or 10 minutes of the day is when I like to do it. And we really kind of take into consideration and into account what our day is going to look like. We're trying to forecast our day and in a way organize our day so that we already started prepared. A lot of gratitude goes a very long way, and being optimistic, even though we are in the face of transition and we are in the face of pain and we are in the face of rejection, being optimistic and choosing to be so is also very important. And that's a huge part of self-care. I like to have a lot of my clients write down some of the things that they're going through. It sounds so simple, but I feel like it's very cathartic in writing something down and expressing your feelings on paper so that you can see it, that it's something very visual that you can look at. And then with time, you go back and you look at how you were feeling then to how you feel now. And again, it helps kind of organize our thoughts on where we are in the present and where we want to be in the future. I also like to have my patients write a letter, write a handwritten letter and burn it or bury it or do something ceremonious with it. And I feel like that's something that's very, very therapeutic. I'm a big believer in mind-body connection. I think that mental wellness is a very integrative approach. I feel like when the body is healthy, the mind is also healthy. I think that they work together. So taking care of your body in the right ways, whatever that may look like to you, whether it's going to the gym, finding the time to go to the gym, or finding the time to go for a walk or a run or a swim or a hike. I feel like that's very therapeutic. Making sure that you're fueling your body with all the right things that it needs, I think is also a big one. And lastly, I think it's in all the simple things, the simple acknowledgements of our own feelings, you know, and taking note at the end of the day, right before you sleep, you know, take a long look at your day and figure out some of the things that maybe you could have done better during the day, and acknowledging those feelings and some of the things obviously that you've done great during the day and kind of balancing that out and making sure that in those thoughts that they're judgment free, that you're not self-criticizing yourself, but rather self-critiquing yourself and building the confidence and also saying the positive things to yourself and the things that you have done right. And remember, it's in all the small things, I think, that really matter the most, and without shame and without judgment. So that's me, Jason. I think that's my little spiel on optimism and wellness.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right.
You're
So,
welcome.
Lauren, if you want to turn your camera and mic back on, now we'll move into some questions for the panelists. So if anybody in the audience has questions, feel free to send those through to the chat, but I do have a few starter questions that are for both of you. So I'll start with Lauren, and then Elizabeth, you could answer the same question. What do the two of you do to maintain your own mental and emotional health, especially considering the circumstances we're in with the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I like what Elizabeth was saying around like making sure that you're doing the little things and the day-to-day stuff to be able to maintain your mental health and well-being. You know, those are the kinds of things that I do. And, you know, the things that I talk about with people that is super helpful and important, especially during COVID. Like the, my self-care has kind of gone from like wherever in the world to like the smaller day-to-day things like baking. Right now I'm trying to perfect a vegan oatmeal cookie recipe and rewatching the Great British Bake Off and making sure that I'm getting outside and that I'm not working all the time and I'm going on walks and exercising and sleeping and texting with friends and calling them and doing all of the things that remind me that like I'm bigger than my job. I'm also a person in this world navigating this COVID thing. and everything that comes with it. Those are my big ways of maintaining mental health.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. How about you, Lauren?
You know, Jason, I've gotten into running. I'm a big advocate of exercise, so I feel like that has been so therapeutic for me lately. I have begun taking out my headphones and I'm just running early in the morning and just listening to the sounds and seeing the sights, I think has been very instrumental, to my mental health, and as Lauren and I are in the profession, we hear and see different things every day, and if you're not careful if therapists are not careful with their self-care, that can lead us down a whole nother road that we don't even want to look at. So I make sure that I'm doing all of those small things and keeping and taking my own advice and staying healthy in the ways that I feel are best suited for me. I also spend a lot of time with loved ones. Like Lauren was saying, our support system is imperative. And in the process, what I found interesting during this pandemic is that I have also weeded out the people that have no longer served my purpose, which is a very hard thing to do, because some of your closest friends or loved ones may not always want the best for you. And I feel like at this point in time, I'm trying to cultivate my own garden, and right now I'm planting roses and lilies and daffodils, and at the same time I'm taking out the weeds. So I think that has been very instrumental in my own self-growth and self-care.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, we'll start this one with you. So I think for our listeners out there, or our viewers, the career and professional development team really works on support for job searching, resume development, interview practice, things like that. And I think both of you have talked a lot about sort of self-help practices, but are there any specific resources that you would refer people to or recommend that would help them maintain their mental health during this time?
Here in San Antonio, they may look a little different than they are in Austin. There are Center for Healthcare Services here in the San Antonio vicinity that are free. They offer all sorts of classes. I also highly recommend looking for workshops. Right now, a lot of webinars and Zoom meetings from great therapists are free to the public. They're open to the public. I also recommend, believe it or not, podcasts. I'm a big fan of listening to people in regards to relationships. I love Esther Perel. I love Brene Brown. I kind of like the more mainstream ones. But I really like what they say, because I'm feeling that at this particular time, they're speaking about vulnerability and authenticity and things that are relative to what's happening right now, and how we are all at some level going through the exact same thing. I mean, for the first time, I can pick up the telephone and I'm calling a girlfriend in London or in Dubai, and we're going through the exact same thing, or they're going through the exact same things that I am here. So looking for your community resources, what's available to you, looking for online things that are free, informing yourself, keeping up to date with some of the new things that are coming out, these podcasts, YouTube videos that are amazing. Some speakers are amazing on mental health, and just kind of staying active and staying very productive at this time.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the webinars and podcasts, and knowing your local resources for counseling, like Capital Area Counseling in Austin and LifeWorks Austin as well. And YWCA Austin is doing amazing work, especially around the intersection of like mental health and experience of people of color. So that one is super helpful, super cool. I also think about like online resources too, along with what Elizabeth was mentioning with podcasts and things like that. And when I'm looking for those resources, I'm looking for the intersection between mental health and social justice, because that's a big lens that I use and is super important to me. So the big kind of resources that I go to for that are decolonizing therapy, inclusive therapists, therapy for Black girls, open book chat, Moon Tower Counseling, and the Latinx Therapists Action Network. And they have resources not just for therapists, of course, but they also have thoughts, ideas, support, tools for people who need that help, not just professionals. And I like that they have that particular intersection, and that perspective is super important. So those are my biggies in the mental health world, along with the Body Is Not an Apology and Body Positive Panda. If you're specifically looking for body positivity, body acceptance, different abilities, that kind of thing.
Thanks. So I know both of you have already touched on this to a degree, but I want to kind of hone in on this. So what sort of things have you seen that have worked for the clients in your practice in these past several months? And I'll start with Lauren.
Sure. So I think the biggest things are really, really, really reinforcing and remembering the reality of what they're going through, and being able to ground in that, like, things are hard right now as everybody's coming at them with like different perspectives and minimizing, and as our government is saying, that things aren't a big deal. So like really reinforcing that, as well as specifically helping people develop language around boundaries with others. Like Elizabeth was saying, you know, she, and hope we all have been, like weeding out the people who aren't helpful to us, and like specifically helping them talk through and walk through what kind of language they want to use in order to be able to limit their interactions with those people, be able to redirect the conversations, and also helping people get really comfortable with the fact that they are uncomfortable and they're living in unknowns. And, you know, I know Elizabeth spoke to that as well, and that is hard and super important and helpful for people.
Awesome. Elizabeth.
You know, just piggybacking off of Lauren, I think that it is the most difficult thing to kind of sit in pain, you know, and letting the process take its course. And I'm a firm believer that when I say letting the process go, what I mean is learning to sit with it, and being okay with sitting with this a difficult situation, if that makes sense. Now, that doesn't mean being complacent in the pain or not doing anything and not being productive. It's being productive in it, is what I think helps and aids in transition. Learning to let it go, let the process go and go down the path that it's supposed to, and be confident that your expertise is going to lead you in the right direction. And that something will come up, being optimistic. Like I was saying earlier, I'm finding it extraordinary for whatever reason during this time. The EMDR, I work with an EMDR machine, and, you know, many times, and I thought about it today as I was seeing my patients, many times I just want to, when they're undergoing the EMDR, and, you know, sometimes, a lot of times during the process, they're in a complete breakdown, you know, and they're weeping uncontrollably. And there's so many times where I just kind of, you know, want to console them. But at the same time, I'm learning to trust the process and knowing that we have to be broken down in order for us to rebuild again, and they always come out of it. So I've been really kind of looking at that, and being okay with just sitting still in the moment. It's a very hard thing to do, and it's an acquired skill, I think, but it's being comfortable in that process, I think, is imperative.
Awesome. So we have a few questions, so I'm gonna play around with some of these. So if let's imagine a scenario and y'all are the manager in the workplace, what sort of things would you do or could you do that would help improve the work-life balance of the team that you are supervising? and maybe I think the other part of that is, what would you recommend people to maybe look for or seek out when seeking employment in terms of that work-life balance? We'll start with Elizabeth.
You know, a work-life balance is for some people very difficult. You know, if I was a manager in a company, I would really recommend, I don't know about implement, but I would really recommend that everybody finds their meditation time. I found it interesting. I work for a Japanese company, and every morning at 6 a.m., no matter what, we stretched for 25 minutes. But that little meditative process of stretching was very instrumental because that set the tone for the day. And it was at a manufacturing plant. And so I found that very interesting, and almost recommending that sort of thing, some sort of meditation beginning the day. I think that I feel like that would be a great work-life balance tool to do, you know, and making sure that they're implementing at home their exercise routines, their nutritional routines, and that sort of thing. I'm a very physical person, so I would highly recommend those type of work-life balance things.
Awesome. Lauren.
Mhm. So when I think about that and I put myself in the shoes of a manager as well as an employee, I want to see that my manager is modeling that work-life balance, that they are not sending emails at 11 p.m., that they're not responding to emails at 5 a.m., that they're setting their own boundaries and respecting their own life, and also that they're creating the kind of culture through word and action and follow through that reinforces that they believe that work-life balance is important, that it exists, and it's something that they're going to support. It's not just something that they're saying. So through modeling, through words, through action, through culture are the big ways and the reinforcers within that. One of the things that I've seen that has been super helpful for people to be able to grab onto that is to help them define their values and what they want their work culture to be like, what sort of environment they want to have. And then they can backtrack to how that translates to work-life balance. And really asking those questions in an interview process, like, what is your culture around leaving the office? Are you expected to be on call? How are they balancing the on-call process if I have to be? What happens if you don't come into the office or you don't respond to something by 9 a.m.? Like knowing what those expectations are, knowing what they're modeling. And if they are looking like super overrun and haggard and scary, then that might be a clue that they're not maintaining that and they may not be able to provide that for you.
So thank you. Do either of you know of, or either of you aware of any sort of tools that maybe people can use to measure workplace stress, or maybe just stress in general in their lives, for people that like to have a little bit of a quantitative thing going on there?
The only
For
thing
me,
in my mind are depression inventories.
Total. Are you sleeping at night? Are you having anxiety attacks or panic attacks? But as far as an actual assessment instrumental tool, I agree with Lauren. I don't, you know, there are ways to measure stress, but you want to look at it in a very physical form, you know? Yeah, for sure.
That would be like organizational psychology. That's what they do.
Gotcha. So I think both of you have mentioned like stress and anxiety at various points tonight. Are there any sort of tools that you would recommend for people to do, like guided meditation to help them fall asleep at night and maybe get some of that anxiety out before they go to bed so they can have a restful night's sleep?
Mhm.
And we'll start with Elizabeth.
I'm a big proponent of guided imagery and guided meditation. I'm a hypnotherapist, I love it. I believe that's extremely helpful in regards to helping rest. I also there's beautiful apps like Headspace on there. I'm a big fan of Headspace, and they really kind of walk you through a very simple process on how to um, wind down. And winding down just isn't when you hit the bed. You have to remember that your body takes some time to wind itself down. I'm a big believer that putting the phone away 2 hours before you go to bed is very helpful. And some people don't like to have TV in their rooms, but I feel like if some people, the television helps them fall asleep. Warm baths, some soothing tea, soothing music, good conversations with family and with friends also help. And to really try hard to not think about work or lack thereof or stressful situations. I know it's very hard to do so when the mind is relaxing down into sleep, but really try hard to not think about those things. If you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, don't check your phone for the time, don't turn on the lamp. You just kind of want to turn right back around. And even if you don't fall asleep right away, you try very hard. We call it the blank slate mind. As easily as thoughts come in, they go out just as easily, and really try to focus in on that. And really look up guided imagery. There's some wonderful exercises online, and like I said, the apps that are very beneficial and very helpful for that.
Some Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo all of that. Everything that Elizabeth said, that really speaks to that, I think the latest phrase is sleep hygiene. So making sure that you are setting the kind of environment, as well as having the specific routine around sleep. So all of the guided imagery, meditation, blank slate mind, making sure that you're shutting down electronics, maybe not even having them in your room. I think the other only piece that I would add is around consistency, which is going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, really getting your brain and your body into that habit, and maintaining those particular hours is super helpful and important, and kind of reminds your body and your brain oh, this is shutting down time. We're getting to that space and that place. Oh, this is wake up time. And from with COVID and for my unemployed peeps, it's that's the first thing that goes out the window. And I'm no, that's the last thing that you want to lose. So all of that, and also those couple of pieces that I would add.
Awesome, thanks y'all. So I think that that's probably a good spot to end the questions. We hope everybody's gonna have a very restful night's sleep tonight. So we're gonna turn back on the slideshow and wrap things up. But a quick round of applause and thank yous to both Lauren and Elizabeth. So here we go, thank y'all. But of course, we are here. Our alumni, you always have access to the Career and Professional Development Office. We would encourage you to visit our website, career.stedwards.edu, so you can find out who you can talk to for various needs, for career coaching, resumes, LinkedIn reviews. When you start getting those interviews, of course, we will do plenty of interview prep with you. If you want to see different jobs and internship listings, keep in mind, you don't have to just utilize Indeed and things like that. We have our own Hilltop Careers database in which employers are looking specifically for St. Edward's students and alumni, so please join us there. There are a number of job and internship opportunities and search resources on that web page, so go ahead and look that up, and there's even a page dedicated specifically to alumni. If you want to figure out how to actually get a hold of us, you can always email us at scucareer@stedwards.edu. You can certainly call us, that is our main line, but we are not in the office all the time, so The quickest way to get us is through that email address. And if you do call us, we check the voicemail at least once or twice a day, and we will call you back pretty quickly. I'm going to pass it over to Gabby.
Thank you, Jason. And thanks again to Elizabeth and Lauren. I learned so much. I was even reflecting on my own sleep cycles, and I was like, we will put it to the test. But as you all saw, it's very easy to join our events and to be engaged. You can get your questions answered on the spot, which is really great. There are also other ways to connect with the Alumni Association. So we're here to be your lifelong connection to the Hilltop. If you follow us on social media or on our website, you'll stay in the know regarding our upcoming events. And if we have your correct contact information, then we're able to keep you involved as well and send you the magazine and connect you to alumni in the near area. And speaking of upcoming events, if we go to the next slide, we'll be taking a break from Topper Career Talks for the next couple months because we are prepping for a very special homecoming edition. So it'll be taking place in the spring. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities available for you to join us. In fact, next Wednesday, we're going to be having an alumni open house. So if you want to meet alumni that are in nearby chapters or affinities, you'll get the information on that as well. We also have on November 19th, a Hilltop Learning Series where Shelby Henderson, who is an 09 grad, will be going over how to cook a Thanksgiving meal for everyone that is learning to do that or hosting for the first time or keeping it to yourself. And then on December 9th, we're going to have a Topper Trivia Night. So we would love for y'all to join us at any of these events. And we are looking forward to seeing you in the spring for our special homecoming edition of Topper Career Talks. So without further ado, thank you again for joining us. And thank you again to our panelists and to Jason for hosting. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank y'all. Bye.